Hi, I'm Melissa, and this is the Book Break. And today we're talking to Lyn Worthen, who put together a really fun anthology, Cat Ladies of the Apocalypse. Let's bring her on in.
Hi, Melissa.
Hello, Lyn. So the first time I saw this book, I just laughed out loud. I thought, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Like, I've got the book behind me, but I want to show the cover big because look at how fun this cover is. So you've got to tell us, how did this whole anthology start?
Like everything else, a random conversation on social media. I don't remember which group I was part of at the time, but people were saying, oh, I want to read stories about strong women. Other people were saying, oh, we want to read stories about the apocalypse. And somebody threw in, I want to read stories with more cats in them. And one thing after another, we just sort of stirred it all up and came up with Cat Ladies of the Apocalypse. It just sort of grew after that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and I like it because I'm a big fan of anthologies because,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to sit down and read cover to cover. I mean, you have multiple short stories. If I'm remembering correctly, there's 21 stories
Yes.
in that.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so you probably can't say if you have a favorite, but what would be one of or two of your favorites?
Well, there's, the Cat Ladies in the Time of Cthulhu, where the cats take on the horrible beast.
Yes.
And, geez, I love them all for so many different reasons. We have, fun ones like the Cthulhu story. We have some really serious ones where the cats and the ladies are, really up against some pretty tough odds. I had enough stories about cat ladies who were librarians and using their special knowledge that came in that I almost put together another book, Librarians in the Time of the Apocalypse, and I still might. But I think there are two stories in the anthology right now that have librarians in them, and using their special knowledge in very different ways to figure out how to survive in the new world landscape that they found themselves in. So
Yeah.
it's such a wide-ranging anthology with stories that range from, there's a little bit of magic, there's science fiction, there's a zombie story in there. And I'm not a fan of zombie stories, but that one pulled me in.
I liked
So
it. I liked the zombie
yeah.
story. I'm usually not a zombie fan either,
Mm-hmm.
but I liked it, and I liked
Yeah.
the heroines. We'll
Yes.
say
Yes.
in that.
Yeah.
So that was
So
fun.
yeah, when I got to the part you're referring to, it was like, okay, sealed the deal.
Yeah,
It was just,
definitely.
yeah, it's just so much fun to be reading a story and come up against something you don't expect. And
Yeah.
that's what this entire anthology is stories that you don't quite expect. We had fun with the apocalypse.
Yeah. Well, and there were different kinds of
Mm-hmm.
apocalypse. It's not apocalypse, it's apocalypse. We'll just say apocalypse. So I thought that was really interesting with it because you had, we mentioned the zombies. You had some that was because of natural disasters. You had some that was like maybe aliens, but then you still had like some things that you would maybe think about when you think of an apocalypse. So I liked the variety in there.
Right.
That was really cool.
Right.
So Lyn, you do multiple anthologies. By do them, I mean you organize it and you edit it. Tell us more about that.
Well, I'd love to say that there's a theme behind the anthologies that I create. I've put together about a dozen now, and I'm working on one that's going to be holiday hijinks, so just fun, engaging Christmas stories. But mostly the theme is story ideas that Lyn thought sounded fun at the time. And so we have um, romance anthologies, a paranormal romance anthology, a cozy mystery anthology. We just have a lot of fun. I open up a call and say, hey, people, send me stories in this theme by this date. And then I sit down and spend about a month reading through them all and sorting, and then working with the authors afterwards that I've chosen to polish up the rough spots and build the anthology. It's a real fun. It's a fun exercise,
Yeah.
and I've always been a fan of short fiction. I keep anthologies on my nightstand because if I'm sitting down to read a novel, that's going to keep me up all night.
Yeah.
I just know it will. But a short story, I can read one, maybe read a second one. And if I fall asleep, I can, before I finished a third one, I've still read complete stories and I'm good with that. I've always loved doing that.
Yeah.
So this is
That's a
just a way
really
to
good
have fun with
point.
it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have that problem. Like, obviously, I love to read, and I am that person that stays up really
Yep.
late because I'm like, okay, one more chapter. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
one more chapter because I don't want to put it down. And
Right.
thankfully, most of the books that I read are good. Like they're really,
Yeah.
and so I really don't want to put them down. So that's all right, viewers. That's a good reason to get into anthologies. So, Lyn, if there are writers out there, how could they learn about what anthologies you're doing calls for?
Well, I have on Facebook. There's the Camden Park Press page on Facebook, and I always post anthology calls and reminders there. And then also my website, camdenparkpress.com. I post the open calls, the projects that are in progress, and then also links to more about the anthologies that are released and where people can find them if they're looking to buy something.
Yeah.
Again, it's all sorts of different flavors of short fiction, and there's something for just about everybody, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious, what got you interested in publishing anthologies? Because a lot of writers don't necessarily think about that, but I think that's a unique thing about you.
The first short story I sold into a professional market was put into an anthology. And magazines are wonderful, but they're kind of fleeting. And an anthology, I want to say real, but with air quotes around it, but it's a book. I can hold it in my hand and I can put it on my bookshelf and on my brag shelf and be proud of it. And there's a specific theme to an anthology. An anthology, I have stories in an anthology about dragons. I have stories in an anthology about I have a story in an anthology about the end of the world. Which is a story I never thought I would have written and would not have written if the editor hadn't personally challenged me. But
Yeah.
I have stories in a lot of different anthologies because they're fun and to take a theme and say, okay, here's the idea that somebody has. What's my spin on it? How can I play with it?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about building anthologies is I can say, okay, here's an idea, a theme. I'll toss that out and see what comes back. And it challenges me too, because I write a story for each of my anthologies.
Yes.
So
So which one of the stories in The Cat Lady of the Apocalypse is yours?
uh, my story in Cat Ladies of the Apocalypse is called Burning Bright. It's written under a pen name. All of my fiction is under pen names so that I can keep my editor self and my writer self separate. It's written under the pen name of Lee Saunders, which is a name I use for science fiction and fantasy stories.
Awesome. So can our viewers find out more about other books that you're in on your website? Where can they go about that?
Well, for things that Lee is working on, and I refer to my pen names in the third person. For things that Lee is working on, you would go to leesaunders.com. And I also announce them on my Facebook wall. And then Lee has her own Facebook page that she announces things on. For stories that I'm writing in the mystery, thriller, suspense vein, that would be Lauren Christopher. And she's working on the next book in her Hit Lady for Hire series. And again, I talk about them separately because thinking of them as separate people helps me put different hats on when I'm writing than when I'm editing. So
Yeah.
it sounds a little crazy to people who haven't hung around writers before, but
It
yeah.
makes sense to me. Then you can compartmentalize where you're at.
Yeah, they're different projects. And
That's great.
I'm in a different mindset when I'm writing science fiction than when I'm writing a hit lady novel. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's so fun to learn all about this, Lyn. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you very much. And, I'm really glad that you enjoyed Cat Ladies of the Apocalypse. We had so much fun putting it together, and the authors have been just very, very excited about it. So
Yeah,
thank you.
I did. And for our viewers, definitely go and check it out. And we will see you next time.